I work at a game development studio in Orlando, Florida, a mid-sized place tucked into a quiet office complex. It had been an especially brutal couple of weeks. Our team was scrambling toward a looming deadline, and I was practically living at the office. Most nights I didn't leave until after midnight. I was behind on coding some late-stage mechanics, so I kept pushing myself to stay, telling myself I'd catch up on sleep after the release. It was a rainy Wednesday night, the kind of Florida storm that drowns the city in blackness between flashes of lightning. The whole office was dim, with only a few desk lamps casting little pools of light. I liked it that way. The sound of rain pattering steadily against my office window helped me focus. The occasional rumble of thunder and flicker of lightning only reminded me how late it was, but I wasn't worried. At least, not yet. Chaz, one of my co-workers, was the only other person still around, working a few offices down. Chaz had been wrapping up his tasks too. He was on a tight deadline for the same project, and had been pulling late nights just like me. Around 8:30 or so, he knocked lightly on my office door before peeking in. "I'm heading out," he said, looking tired but relieved. "You okay to lock up?" I nodded without hesitation, telling him I'd only be another hour, maybe less. He gave me a thumbs up and disappeared down the hallway. A moment later, I heard the heavy front door shut with a dull slam, followed by the faint click of the lock engaging. That left me completely alone in the building. I didn't mind at first. The quiet was almost comforting. Our office layout is shaped like an L, with the entrance at the end of the long hall and my office tucked around the corner down the short wing, basically the farthest spot from the door. I tried to refocus on my code, but I was fighting off fatigue, my eyes getting heavy from staring at the screen too long. To stay awake, I decided to get some coffee from the small kitchen near the center of the L. I walked down the dim hallway, the overhead lights buzzing faintly above me, and flipped on the small lamp by the coffee maker. I didn't need much, just enough caffeine to push through one more hour. As the machine began to heat, I leaned against the counter, listening to the familiar hum and the sound of rain tapping the kitchen window. Then I heard something I couldn't immediately explain, the distinct sound of a door closing somewhere down the hall. Not the heavy front door, this was softer, like one of the private office doors shutting gently. I stood up straight, listening. Nothing followed, just the rain. I stepped into the hallway and glanced toward the longer wing of the office. "Chaz?" I called out, already knowing he was long gone. There was no answer. I waited a few more seconds, straining my ears for movement, then slowly made my way down the hall to check the doors. Each office door I passed was closed, but when I tested the handles, they were all locked, just like they should be after hours. I didn't hear any more sounds, no footsteps, no shuffling, no voices. Still, something felt off. I walked back toward my part of the building, down the short wing of the L, where my office sat at the very end. That's when I noticed it. My door was shut. I froze. I knew I had left it open. I always did when I stepped out, especially when no one else was around. There wasn't a draft in the building, and the windows had all been closed since the storm started. I stared at the door for a long moment, heartbeat rising slightly in my chest. Trying to brush it off, I convinced myself I just shut it out of habit. Still, a sliver of unease crept in as I reached for the handle. I flung the door open quickly, half expecting to find someone inside playing a prank, but my office was exactly how I left it. Empty, silent, normal. I stood in the doorway for a second longer, scanning every corner of the room. The chair was in the same spot, my half-drunk cup of water still on the desk, and the screen glowed faintly with my code editor. There was nothing unusual inside, no sign that anyone had been there, yet the feeling that something was off lingered stubbornly in my chest. I stepped back in, sat down, and tried to shake the nerves as I sipped my coffee and resumed working. Outside, the rain kept hammering against the glass, and every so often a flash of lightning lit up the room for a split second, casting sharp shadows against the walls. The thunder that followed was deep and distant, a low growl that rattled the windows. I was finally settling back into my code when the lights in the hallway flickered once, just once, but long enough to catch my eye. I paused, staring at the reflection in the window for a moment, feeling like I wasn't alone, though I kept telling myself I was. Time slipped by without me realizing. The office had grown quieter, the rain softer now, almost like a whisper. I finished a block of code and leaned back in my chair, satisfied with the progress. It was well past 11, Definitely the latest I'd ever stayed here alone. I decided to call it a night. I saved everything, closed out the programs, and clicked the shutdown button. The screen faded to black, and for a second, I just sat there, letting the silence settle around me. That's when I saw it, in the faint reflection on the dark monitor. A figure, a woman standing directly behind me. She was tall, unmoving, her outline distorted slightly by the curve of the screen. I didn't scream, I didn't even turn around. I sat frozen, my entire body tensed, heart thudding so violently it felt like it might burst from my chest. Every instinct screamed to run, but I moved slowly, deliberately, as if sudden motion might trigger whatever was behind me. I calmly stood, grabbed my bag from under the desk, and avoided looking at the monitor again. I didn't want to see if she was still there. Without turning around, I walked to the door, forcing myself to breathe slowly, naturally. I didn't shut the door behind me. I didn't even look back. I moved down the hall, past the other closed offices, the fluorescent lights above humming faintly. When I felt like I was far enough from that wing, I broke into a sprint. My footsteps echoed off the walls as I rounded the corner, headed for the front exit. I slammed my ID against the reader, yanked the door open, and darted out into the stairwell. The echo of the door slamming shut behind me was the only confirmation I needed. I was finally out of that hallway. I ran down the stairs, barely aware of the storm anymore, and burst through the building's main door into the wet parking lot, heart still pounding as the rain soaked through my clothes. I fumbled for my keys as I dashed through the lot, the downpour blurring my vision and turning the pavement slick beneath my shoes. I jumped into my car, slammed the door shut, and locked it immediately. For a few seconds, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to slow my breathing. My soaked jacket clung to my skin, and my hair dripped onto the seat, but I didn't care. I was out. Safe, I told myself. Safe. But then, against my better judgment, I looked back at the office building. My eyes went straight to the window of my office. The light was still on. And there, barely noticeable but definitely there, was a kink in the blinds, as if two fingers were gently parting them. Someone, something, was standing there, watching me from the inside. I sat frozen again, helpless against the wave of fear that tightened around my throat. I couldn't look away, even though I desperately wanted to. I grabbed my phone and called my boss, Miranda. She answered, groggy but alert when she heard the tension in my voice. I told her everything, about Jazz leaving, the door closing, the reflection, and the figure in my office. There was a long pause on the line before she said, firmly, no one else was supposed to be there. She promised to call the night security guy and have him check the entire office immediately. I stayed in my car, engine running, headlights cutting through the rain. I stared at the building, refusing to blink. 5, maybe 10 minutes passed before Miranda called me back. The security guard had arrived and was sweeping the office now. He says there's no one there, she told me, her voice tighter now. No sign of anyone. I repeated what I'd seen. She didn't laugh. She didn't doubt me. She just said quietly, that's not okay. I'm coming in tomorrow. We'll figure this out. The next day, I tried desperately to convince myself it was just my imagination. Stress, exhaustion, the storm twisting my mind. But the unsettling feeling lingered like a heavy shadow I couldn't shake. Miranda and I watched the security footage together, hoping for some clue, some logical explanation. There was only one camera in the entire office, positioned near the kitchen at the end of the long hall. The footage showed nothing out of the ordinary. No woman, no shadow, no movement beyond the usual flickers of light and occasional passing by staff earlier that day. The silence and emptiness in the video were almost more terrifying than anything I'd seen. Since that night, I've made it a rule to always lock my office door, and I never stay late alone anymore. Sometimes, when the rain taps rhythmically against the windows and lightning briefly illuminates the room, I swear I still see those fingers twitch the blinds, and I know deep down I'm not imagining it.